Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You've reached the No Name Cinema Society, the film review show that dares to dig just a little bit deeper. This is our sound off. It's our freeform segment, and we're going to do a lot of fun stuff tonight. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler, here at my home in Los Angeles, and I apologize for my subdued nature this evening. Me and one of the other members, a couple of us, went out last night and tied one on, and we'll talk about that as the evening goes along. Let me introduce you to my co-host for tonight's freeform segment, Sound Off, where we talk about all sorts of things related to the film industry and other shows that we've done, and you'll see. So here to join me, one of our newest members, ladies and gentlemen, here is the enigmatic Max Fauno. He's doing more mime. And also joining us, one of the members from our 1970 in review show, Zach Domingo's here. So,
I made it your bit, dude. I liked it. I felt like maybe we were both mimes.
Oh my gosh. God, next level. For our audio podcasting listening audience, Max put on a red clown nose. I don't know what to make of it. So I don't know how to segue to it, but I'm just going to show you our schedule. For this, our 66th series of episodes, and this past Thursday was our classic movie discussion, Billy Wilder's The Apartment. And tonight, of course, is a Sound Off. And there you can see just some of the things that we're going to tackle in tonight's Sound Off. I've got an announcement. We're going to recast some of our films from the 1970 review, and I'm going to count down the top 5 Shirley MacLaine performances of all time. So the next question always is, who is drinking with me? As I bring up the slide behind me for the drinking game. Zach, you and I went out last night with Devin and Kelly and others. And are you hungover like me?
I'm not hungover, but I'm very tired, and I am trying not to drink. So
I'm about the hair of the dog. So I got Lagunitas, the same 6-pack that Devin left over a couple nights ago. Lagunitas IPA. I like the IPAs. You see it behind me, but now I'll go full screen with our drinking game. A lot of these things were submitted to us by you fans, things that you do a lot that you've started drinking to whenever we did them. And for me, it is whenever I say contrivance, verisimilitude, all time. Last night, Zach wanted to add another one, which was diegesis. Anytime I say diegesis, you can drink. Anytime Zach says for real talk, or 100%, that's when you drink. Sure. And anytime Max does mime or a funny voice, and there it is, he's doing it. So you guys in the audience can drink, as I will also drink. Cheers to the audience, since these guys are not joining me.
Cheers.
Let's see what's next, guys, on the agenda. Our societal announcement. I feel like all my opening segment sounds are the same. Societal announcement. Usually, this second sound off of the year, we will announce what's going on with our finale episodes, and that's what we're all about here. Every year, we do a poll for you, the audience, about what year in review we are going to study. In 2015, as many of you know, we went back 25 years to study 1990. In 2016, we went back 50 years to study 1966. In 2017, we went back 75 years to study 1942. In 2018, we went back 30 years to study 1988. 2019, we went back 60 years to study 1959. And last year, Zach and I went back 50 years to study. What year, Zach?
1970.
1970. So here's the poll that we offered to you, the audience, open between Oscar night, April 25th, and June 1st, we closed the poll. And it was a very close results. The winner won by just a single vote. And so now we were ready to reveal to you the winner of the fan poll of what year we're going to be studying on our finale this year. Take a look at this little clip that we released on as a vlog on YouTube.
I am going to now reveal the society members that will be doing it with me. I don't do this on my own. I have some society members that join me to travel back in time to look at these films. So first, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you a terrific actor and also Devin's much younger girlfriend, Kelly O'Malley's going to be with me on the year in review this year. So you can speak, Kelly. It's not a silent film. I'm the only one with lines, apparently. And also with us is another actor. He's the 4th best actor in Los Angeles, and our very enigmatic friend, Max Fauno, backing his way in. Guys, talk to me. You guys get ready to time travel with me one of these years? You can talk, because I don't understand what's the silence.
Emphatic thumbs up.
Emphatic thumbs up. All right.
For those who can't see but can only hear.
No more holding back the years. Now is the time that we are going to reveal. You guys have your spots. We're going to reveal the year that we're going to study. Ready right now? And it is going to be, forget me, but don't forget, cameraman, I got a thing too here. There we go. And the year in review is going to be, it's 1986, the year that Top Gun was the #1 film at the box office. And here you can see 1986 year in review. It's the 59th Annual Academy Awards.
1986 is the year that wins. It'll be the first time that we will be looking at a film from a decade for a second time. We already did 1988 3 years ago. And the fact at the end of this process, we will have looked at 1986, 1988, and 1990. So it's just a 5-year period, and yet 3 very different sets of films. And as you can see, the combatants for our 1986 in review are Kelly, and this man, Max, is going to be doing 1986. Are you excited, Max?
I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. I really am.
Zach, you, of course, did this project last year. Do you have any words of wisdom that you'd like to share for Max going on this journey?
Yeah, don't wait till the last minute. One, don't save the heavy hitters for towards the end. And definitely do. Why I do mean don't save all of it for the last minute. The marathon is pretty fun.
A few days before we go, we'll probably. I mean, I am planning on watching like the 10 biggest ones in like the 2 or 3 days leading up to the show, and that way they're the freshest in my mind. And Zach did a mini marathon with me at the end of that project. So there you go, Max. Zach has dropped some wisdom on you.
I love it. That's awesome. It makes sense.
So for our other finale episodes, this is the rest of the announcement. Our top 10 of 2020 this year will feature Mr. Patrick Taylor, the composer, and this guy right here doing his first top 10.
Really?
Both he and Patrick are doing their first top 10. Congratulations, Zach. There you go. For our Oscar preview show, for this year, where we go through the Oscar categories when they eventually come out. Matt Polis will be doing his first Oscar preview, and he'll be joined by Jim, who will be doing his second Oscar preview, and we'll be breaking down the screenwriting, directing, acting categories, the big categories. So that's the announcement on our finales. Another segment down the tube. Zach's loving it. He's like trucking right along in this show.
Always, man.
We'll be done by 6:30. Moving on. We do it only once a year. It's a hugely popular segment. It is time for our recastings. And this is where we recast classic films with modern actors. And the tradition has become where we do it with films that we wanted to remake from the year in review that we just studied. So last year, of course, Zach, Matt Polis, and I studied 1970 films for their 50th anniversary, and we each laid out a different film that we wanted to remake, and those are the films that we're going to recast tonight with modern actors. The films are going to be The Traveling Executioner, directed by Jack Smite. That was Matt Polis's. Zach wants to remake The Dunwich Horror, directed by Daniel Heller. And my choice was Darling Lily, directed by Blake Edwards. And those are the 3 films that we're going to recast. Zach and I are both going to do Dunwich Horror. Max might step in and do Traveling Executioner. You going to do Traveling Executioner with us?
Yeah, I got a couple suggestions.
Oh, all right. So Max is going to step in for Matt Polis in a way and do Traveling Executioner for that. And I think, kids, that's where we're going to start, if I remember correctly. It's The Traveling Executioner. It's time to recast that film. A little scene, sort of, I don't know how obscure it is. Jack Smite was very consistently working filmmaker. He's made a lot of films, including one that made my top 5 films, written by William Goldman, the film Harper from 1966. He's a pretty decent filmmaker. So this was the film that Matt Polis wanted to remake. He thought a quirkier approach might have improved the film, something akin to something the Coen brothers might do. As I recall, Zach, you have not seen The Traveling Executioner.
No, I do vaguely remember us talking about this. If I remember correctly, you guys didn't love it, but thought it had promise. Is that the movie?
Which is why it's right for a remake. That's pretty much exactly right. Didn't love it, but thought it had promise for a remake. And actually, before we start, Max watched it for the first time for this. So just if he has a small sentence or two about, did you actually like it?
It wasn't a very strong film, in my opinion, but it had potential.
Yeah, and one of my things about it is, I think the first and probably most important problem of 3 screenplay problems is what I call the Braveheart complex, in that the main character's motivation is understood academically, but not felt deeply enough to warrant the lengths to which he goes through. He barely has any relationship with this woman, and he risks everything for her. So it feels like an equation not solved correctly.
Absolutely.
When we remake it, we're going to remake it better. And so in terms of the recasting, we are going to start with the Jonas Candide character, played by Stacy Keach in the original. And so, Max, I'll let you go first. Who would you recast as Jonas Candide?
Matthew McConaughey, I think, ripped his entire career off Stacy Keach's performance. This guy was literally Matthew McConaughey. Now, I'll tell you, there was an evolution to this, but the first moment he comes on camera, I'm like, Johnny Depp is in this movie? And then he opened his mouth, and I was like, Matthew McConaughey studied this movie for years. And then, because of the cleft lip and what have you, I started to see Joaquin Phoenix. But I have to say, I would go with McConaughey.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I went with Joaquin Phoenix. On a show last year that I believe Zach was a part of, I named Joaquin Phoenix as the best actor of the decade for his work in Joker. We also did recastings on that same episode, and I recast him in the Dean Martin role in Rio Bravo. So there's no question to me that Joaquin Phoenix would not only turn this role on its ear, he'd find all the darkness and all the humanity that exists inside Jonas. The lust that drives him, the pride that fills him, the guilt that he suppresses. So much to mine, and no better actor to do it. Plus, my other reason was they share a physical characteristic, which you've already pointed out. That might be the reason that Joaquin Phoenix immediately came to mind, but acting-wise, I think it is a role that he would really take to town. As far as Matthew McConaughey is concerned, I think he's underrated. We did a top 5 Matthew McConaughey films back in episode 30.4. Back in the day. Zach, do you have a preference? I know you haven't seen the film, but Matthew McConaughey, Joaquin Phoenix, any thoughts?
I love both of them. Yeah. It's funny you keep bringing up the Joker. I did not love that movie, but his performance was awesome.
When I named him the best actor of the decade for that, I think I also mentioned that I had named him best actor of the year 4 times in the last decade. I think it was 2013, 2018, 2010. I think he might be our best living actor right now, aside from Max.
Yes, he's number 5 then, being reminded that I'm number 4.
That's right. Ryan said you were number 4. I said you were the best. A mini crossover, sounds like Joaquin Phoenix was your runner-up.
Yes.
And so it doesn't sound like you disagree that much.
No, I think they'd all be great, actually, yeah.
Let's move on to the character of Gundrid Herzallerbeest, or Herzallerliebst, played by Mariana Hill. Mariana Hill is actually from Santa Barbara, playing this German character. She does have some German heritage, however. Her cousin is actually Norman Schwarzkopf, for those that remember the Gulf War. Cousin to actress Mariana Hill, whose best-known role is probably Fredo's hussy wife in Godfather Part 2. It's not clear to me, Max, in the film why the character has to be German. We'll go with it. As such, I'd theoretically much rather cast a German actress, though I wound up bending that rule slightly. Let's see how Max approached Gundrid, the hot blonde prisoner, we'll call her. Max, who did you cast in this role?
Because the German aspect felt kind of arbitrary, and the emotional connection also felt contrived or just unmerited, warranted somehow.
Unfulfilled, yeah.
More academic, I think you put it. I just said, well, cool, let's just cast someone totally different. And I went with, I may be saying her name wrong, Zazie Beetz from The Joker.
Back to Joker. Everything's about Joker today.
Yeah, I know, right? She's great.
Zazie Beetz is a gorgeous woman. I didn't like her in Joker necessarily. I'm not convinced of her total skill yet. She was in my number 1 film of 2020, and she wasn't bad in it. I haven't seen her really test her range yet. I'm not sure this film would require much range-wise, so she might be fine. At the risk of opening a can of worms, there's a non-traditional casting element to it. The film takes place in 1918. It would add an element of racism potentially, which might be interesting. It would be a whole other element to the movie. There might be something to the racism element in that they disliked her just because she was German. Her foreignness was, a reason for prejudice, and so it would just switch what the prejudice is. Zach, anything on Zazie Beetz?
I love Zazie Beetz. She's going to come up again later. I don't know, I was just thinking about Atlanta, and you're talking about not having seen her full range yet.
I've seen her in Atlanta.
I can agree with that.
Oh, okay.
But I think she does have the range. There's just hasn't been anything that's really been able to showcase that yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the jury's still out, I think it's fair to say, on Zazie Beetz. For me, guys, as much as I wanted to cast a German actress, I went instead with an actress from Luxembourg who has worked a lot in Germany. So I thought that was close enough, Max. Vaguely European, and she actually speaks German, so I think it's fine. And it also ties back to the show because it's the actress that I named as the best actress of 2017 for her work in Phantom Thread. Referring to Vicky Creeps, not only does she have the look in my mind, she's got the chops, which she proved not only in Phantom Thread, but also in films like The Young Karl Marx, A Most Wanted Man, and The Last Vermeer. She's definitely a woman I would sacrifice my livelihood for if she showed any interest in me. Have you guys seen Phantom Thread or any of those other films?
Yeah, Phantom Thread's great.
Yeah.
She was awesome. She's a force to be reckoned with in that movie.
I love that recasting. I think she's wonderful. I mean, I remember her standing out.
Yeah. Moving on to the role of Jimmy, played by Bud Cort in the film. And just as a setup, this was before Bud Cort did Harold and Maude, but after he did MASH and Brewster McCloud. Max, what do you got for the young apprentice Jimmy?
You know, I really just took two things for this role. I wanted somebody who was that age range and that sort of impressionable, that enthusiastic, that open to learning about this amazing thing.
It's not like you chose Zach.
So I chose Zach. Exactly.
Thank you. I've been waiting for this.
You're cast, buddy. No, I would have cast Zach had I met him before, and that doesn't make any sense because I have never met this actor either. But I went with Caleb McLaughlin from Stranger Things.
Oh, you went real young.
Well, he's on the cusp. I think he could play 20, maybe not.
I'm curious as to his range. You know, he's great in Stranger Things. I did go a little bit older. There's someone that I think has a perennial sort of young look. I get to match my best actor of the decade, Joaquin Phoenix, with the actor I chose as the best supporting actor of the decade for his work in Detroit. Referring to Will Poulter, he's slightly older than Bud Cort and certainly Caleb McLaughlin, but he sort of, I think, has that perennially naive, deer-in-the-headlights apprentice sort of look to him, even when it's just a ruse. I think he's a phenomenally gifted actor time and time again, and more importantly, in this case, a great match for Joaquin Phoenix. Do you know Will Poulter, Max?
Will Poulter, not by name, possibly by face, and definitely by smell.
Zach, do you remember Will Poulter?
I don't.
Well, I guess you'll have to take my word for it. He's really good. Detroit has some issues with the film. It was my number 10 film in 2017, I think, but he is amazing. And like I said, the best supporting actor performance of the decade. So worth it for seeing just for that. Max, I'm done recasting. How do you feel about our remake now?
It's great. It's 24% better.
That's very exact. Zach, would you watch our Joaquin Phoenix, Will Poulter, and Vicky Creeps, or would you watch Matthew McConaughey, Zazie Beetz, and Caleb McLaughlin?
It's a weird. No, yeah, I'd watch. That's a mishmash of people for sure.
Yeah, it could be fun, and we definitely make it better, Max. You, me, and the Coen brothers. That was Matt's choice for remake, so I hope he approves our choices. It's time to bring Zach in on this fold, and time to remake and recast the Dunwich Horror from 1970, which is this is my Halloween movie that I watched in 2020, and obviously the one that Zach wanted to remake. It's actually, Zach has been remade once before as a TV movie in 2008. It is based on a book by one of Zach's favorite authors, as I recall, H.P. Lovecraft. And also, if I recall, Zach said he felt like a modern, more realistic approach might help land the fantastic material in a more meaningful way. Zach, does that about sum up what you're thinking?
For the most part, yes. I would not call H.P. Lovecraft one of my favorite authors. I like the universe that he's created, and I love Lovecraft more. I'm a big horror person in general. Yeah, and I think I mentioned this last time. In the last 5 years, we've been seeing a real resurgence of Lovecraftian horror in our media. Film, TV, video games. It's been a thing. So, yeah, I thought it'd be a ripe time for it.
Zach, of course, is our conduit to the world of video games. I'm just going to assume, Max, you have not seen the Dunwich Horror?
I have not seen the Dunwich Horror. It did occur to me that maybe we should add the word conduit to the drinking game whenever you say it.
I don't say it that much. Well, I'll try and say conduit more often as I drink myself.
It just felt special, that's all. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think one thing I think we should point out before we start the recasting, Zach, is the 1970 version of the Dunwich Horror. I think we all agree was very, very bad. It was a very bad, over the top movie.
Will not argue that it's not a hill I am willing to die on.
Starting with the Wilbur Wheatley character played in the film by Dean Stockwell. Who do you got for Wilbur, Zach?
I've got a little bit of a theme going here, and this is not something I would say under any other circumstances if it weren't for the last couple years. Robert Pattinson.
Now, here's what I'll say about Robert Pattinson. You know, he's great in Good Time. He's great in Childhood of a Leader. Is capable of giving great performances. He was in Jim's worst film of 2020 called The Devil All the Time, and he's really terrible on that. And the stories that have come from that set and also from the Batman movie is that he is, speaking of horror, a horror to work with. He is the new face of good actor behaving badly.
Awesome.
Yeah, good luck with that remake, Zach.
Great, thank you. But he is awesome in Lighthouse, which is also, I think, one of the best Lovecraftian adaptations. I really don't care about him at all, but I thought he was amazing in that movie.
Have you seen Good Time?
No, I have not.
It's from those filmmakers I hate, the Safdie brothers. I just hate them personally, but the performance is strong. And James, one of our old society members, named him the best actor of 2017, I think it was, for Good Time. So Pattinson has come up on the show before, and he fits the role. Can't disagree with that. Like, no question, he looks like he comes from old money. Like, he definitely fits the role. For the one that I'm directing, I went with an actor that people much more enjoy working with. I initially struggled with this one because a lot of my go-tos for because a lot of these recastings, I recycle a lot of the same actors that I love from year to year. Like I said, with Joaquin Phoenix, I recast him last year. I've been doing a lot of the same actors, but a lot of the 20-something male actors that I was using for the parts like these are now a little too old for this. I used to recast Miles Teller a lot in roles like these, Jesse Plemons. They were my initial thoughts, but then I realized they sort of aged out of this one. I need someone who's at red late 20s and, you know, could be charming enough to lure in a discerning young female. Then I suddenly remembered my 2016 choice should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor for his work in the film, Captain Fantastic. And you guys might know him from 1917, referring to George Mackay. Tell me this guy doesn't feel like he comes from old money and would be desperate to reclaim that family glory. And if you've not seen his interpretation of Hamlet in the 2019 film Ophelia, you guys are missing out.
I have suffered through the movie Mr. Fantastic.
Captain Fantastic?
Captain Fantastic. Yeah.
It's coming up as an indie spotlight this year. Zach, do you know George Mackay?
Only from 1917, I think.
The thing about him is Wilbur.
To be honest, I think you could do a lot with that character. I can't speak on like his ability. It could be an interesting performance regardless, an interesting character depending on how you
If you see more stuff from him, I think you'll come to respect him a little more. But I mean, Captain Fantastic, obviously Ophelia, he has a smaller role in Ophelia, but he's fabulous as Hamlet. Telling the Hamlet story from Ophelia's point of view, so he's sort of tertiary character in that, but does it really, really well. One of the better Hamlets, even though Hamlet is not the focus. He's like a trained, really good actor with range, and I think he would kick the ass of this role. Moving on to the character of Nancy Wagner, played in the 1970 version from my 1959 crush, Sandra Dee, not looking as hot in 1970. It's a relatively thankless role, Zach, I think, sort of out of the basic horror movie female, unnaturally gullible and curious. You're the horror expert, so maybe you would disagree with that. But let's see if Zach can bring more out of it in our recasting. Are you going Zazie Beetz here?
No, I'm going as Sandra Dee was your crush at that time. As is Emma Stone in my time. That is who I go with.
Cardboard cutout. Not trying to pick fight with you, but my only concern about Emma Stone, and this is true about Sandra Dee. Sandra Dee was way too old for this role, I think, in 1970. It's a college-age student, and I just wonder if Emma Stone, who I also have a crush on, I wonder if she is aged out of it a little bit.
Maybe, but it's a total remake of this movie.
Would you make them not a college student?
They could be on vacation.
Wasn't the whole thing that she was like curious about this book and like was researching it and then came across Wilbur Wheatley? Isn't that part of it?
Yeah. That's such an easy fix.
Cool. I'm not sure how important the college thing was. I just stuck to it because it you know, I didn't think that was necessarily a problem in it. I can certainly see how college students studying the occult would get involved, be curious about Wilbur Wheatley, and then they meet and he's very charming, and then that adds to it. It's done terribly in this version, but I can see how that would work. So I stuck to that college age kind of thing. So that explains where I'm going to go in my recasting. I'm going with Zoe Deutsch. I've constantly been impressed by the gravitas and depth she has brought to the silliest of movies like Why Him and Before I Fall. I mean, I think she looks the right age as opposed to Sandra Dee and comes off as more intelligent, possibly a little more of a heroine for this generation. Of course, Zoe's mother has recent connection to the show, Max.
Zoe's mother is Mrs. Deutsch Sr.?
I mean, she didn't take Howard Deutsch's name, but we recently kicked off our 1986 in review by watching the film Howard the Duck, starring Zoe Deutsch's mother,
Leah Thompson.
So yes, Zoe Deutsch is Leah Thompson's daughter.
I did not know that. Okay.
Zach, anything on Zoe Deutsch?
Nope. Google image search.
Do you see her?
Copy. Yep.
She's a knockout, right?
Yes.
Have you seen her in anything, Max?
Zoe Deutsch, no.
What I love about her is you can see the talent, even though she isn't always getting the best work. She brings more to the roles in spite of how bad the scripts are. I love that skill. I think she's great. So the next character is Dr. Henry Armitage, played in the film by Oscar winner Ed Begley Sr., not to be confused with his son, Ed Begley Jr., obviously. And I love circularity when we do this. And as such, my initial instinct was to cast Dean Stockwell in this role, now that he's older. Play the young character, he could play the old. That seems perfect, right? Yeah. But then I saw that I wasn't the first to have that idea. He actually played the role in that 2008 remake, so I opted to go in a different direction. Zach, where did you go?
Okay, so this is where my Lighthouse theme comes to fruition. Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I can see that. Makes sense. And Willem Dafoe, he is an actor that has come up on the most top 10s. The Lighthouse made both Jim and Alex's top 10 of 2020.
Nice.
At Eternity's Gate was in George's top 10. Wild at Heart was in my top 10 of 1990. Mississippi Burning was in my top 10, maybe Devin's top 10 of 1988. So Willem Dafoe is an actor that comes up an awful lot in this show. There's like a handful of like 10 actors that are sort of important to the show in terms of how often they come up, and Willem Dafoe is one of those guys. And what I think about Willem Dafoe, and I wonder how Max feels about this, Willem Dafoe I think sometimes is awesome and amazing and great, and sometimes just like completely misses it. And I don't know if he just doesn't care or if it's the project. Like one of the films we reviewed in the show is a film called Motherless Brooklyn, which is a problematic film, and Edward Norton is great in it, but everyone on that review agreed that Willem Dafoe is strangely bad in the movie. So like he's hit or miss for me. There's no question that he's capable. And now the Florida Project is another one where that was on both my and Devin's top 10 of 2017. You can see already how he keeps coming up on the show. Max, do you see what I'm saying about sometimes he can be amazing and sometimes he can be awful?
I do kind of wonder if he's an actor who tries things. He takes some risks.
Yeah,
where
that's a fair point.
Here's a director who will maybe listen to whatever I say. Why don't I try a crazy idea? And then it could turn out good or not.
I think that's probably what it is. Zach is a director with a firm hand, so I'm sure he'll do whatever Zach says.
Dafoe can do whatever he wants.
Devin also named Willem Dafoe as the best actor of 1988 for his work in Mississippi Burning. So he comes up an awful lot on this show. Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. I think you're right, Max, about he's hit or miss sometimes because he's always experimenting, which is good. And I think what's great about him is he's experimenting because he is so confident and able to do so many things that sometimes his experiments are colossal failures. I went a little older, and I also trying to tie it back to the show. So Zach wanted to modernize it, and since I love the idea of circularity, why not change the gender of the character, Henrietta Armitage, if you will. And tying it back to this particular show tonight, I was like, why not just cast Shirley MacLaine? She obviously brings presence and intelligence, not to mention professionalism. I think it would be an interesting twist, and given her personal interest in mysticism and the occult, that might add an extra layer of reflexive and intertextual meaning. We're going to talk about her a lot later tonight, guys. How do you feel about Shirley MacLaine in this role of this old professor?
I think she can do anything. I like Shirley MacLaine a lot.
Cool. Max, I saw you laughing a little bit when you weren't on camera.
Yeah, well, whenever I'm not on camera, I'm laughing. That's just a rule.
I only laugh on camera. I specifically cut to me to get my laugh.
Yeah, man, she's amazing. I mean, look at her in Career.
That was one of our 1959 films, and it was James and Patrick both named it the best film of 1959.
I think it was a very powerful film, but I think she kind of broke the mold a little bit because I felt like it had a strong mold.
Career is a film I like as well. My number 7 film of 1959 project. I'm glad you brought it up. You brought it back to our 1959 in review, so I appreciate that because now the audience will go have to search out our 1959 in review. Career is what we all thought was like the big discovery, a film we had not heard of going into that project.
I hadn't heard of it either.
I'm glad you watched it. I didn't know that you got around to it, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did Shirley MacLaine. I'm excited about it. Her trying to rescue Zoe Deutsch. So now we're going to go to the character of Elizabeth Hamilton, played by Donna Bacala in the original, who didn't really have much of a career after that. It's another kind of thankless female role, the prototypical best friend come detective who brings in the doctor when she suspects something is amiss. And he's hinted at it earlier, so I'm assuming he's going Zazie Beetz here.
I'm going Zazie Beetz. I like Sandra Dee's friend more than Sandra Dee in this.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I don't know why Donna Bacala didn't have a better career. Maybe she just wasn't interested. It's a thankless role, but she was fine in it.
Yeah, if I were to remake this, kind of emphasize how badass her friend is in comparison. Because there's a couple of moments where when she's getting towards the end of her time in the movie, she's kind of fighting back a little bit and trying to navigate the house that she gets ultimately trapped in. I think Zazie could make her way more badass. You could emphasize that moment and then maybe not kill her off, but I think emphasize how tragic and avoidable the situation could have been if it weren't for her dumb friend essentially pulling her into this.
I love that. So I am sort of curious if you remember, there is an Oscar-nominated actress who has a bit part in the Dunwich Horror that interacts with that character. Do you remember who played the nurse?
No.
She'd be Oscar-nominated just 2 years later for a film directed by her brother.
Oh, interesting. No, I don't.
The audience is like, come on, Zach, come on, Max. I just gave a big clue. How many brothers are directing their sisters to Oscar nominations in film history?
Probably just one.
Referring to, of course, Talia Shire, played the nurse in Dunwich Horror, and brothers Francis Ford Coppola, who cast her as the younger sister in The Godfather. And she would be nominated for The Godfather, as well as Rocky in 1976 is Talia Shire's other nomination. Talia Shire, bit part in the Dunwich Horror. All right, now it's time for my best friend Elizabeth Hamilton character. Now this was hard because what name actress would take this role is what I was thinking. So I thought I should focus on something more out of the box. A talented, up-and-coming actress that could do college age, that is operating maybe on the fringes. And then I remembered this amazing performance by the young actress Molly Ephraim in the film The Frontrunner from 2018, I believe. Many of you may know Molly as the eldest daughter on the Tim Allen show Last Man Standing, the older sister of Caitlin Deaver's character, even though at this point Molly is 35, born in our year of 1986. There's a scene in The Frontrunner where she slowly starts to realize that her boss, Gary Hart, might just be guilty after all, and it's some great work that she does a lot with her eyes. She do this part with her eyes closed, and hopefully Zach's version will add some meat to this part like he was talking about, and I think Molly is an actress that could handle that with aplomb. Even though she's a little older, I do think she looks college age. I assume you don't know her, Zach, Molly Ephraim. Mm-hmm. That means we can move on. I'm done with Dunwich Horror if you are, Zach.
Yeah, let's do it.
Now I'm going to move on to the film that I wanted to recast, and I think I'm going to be by myself here. It's called Darling Lily, directed by Blake Edwards, who's one of the directors that has come up the most in when we've done these years in review, and will come up again in our 1986 in review. As I said on the 1970 in review show, I love the idea of this film. A famous British singer is actually a German spy seducing high-ranking officials and learning of their plans. Kind of like a Mata Hari for the other side. So I think the premise is awesome, just the execution. With Blake Edwards leaning on his comic sensibility maybe once too often, it became this weird combination of romantic thriller and slapstick comedy. It was very odd to me. And Zach, I don't think you even watched this one, as I recall.
No, but that premise sounds pretty dope.
Dope! It's totally dope! Anyway, so the first role we're going to recast is the role of Lily, played by, in the film, Blake Edwards' wife, Julie Andrews. Of course, Julie Andrews is lovely and charming, but she was the girl next door. So I'm not sure she had the outright sex appeals to seduce men left and right. Sorry, Julie, I'm just calling it like I see it. So I'm looking here to amp up the sexuality, looking for the kind of woman that is so striking that men are somewhat helpless, and she needs to sing like an angel. Zach and I worked on a film in Maryland. This film was a musical, and the director was constantly referencing what I think is the only musical she's ever seen. Do you know that musical that I'm talking about, Zach?
I don't. What was it?
She's constantly referring to The Greatest Showman, which is a very recent musical with Hugh Jackman. But also in it is Michelle Williams, who is my choice to play the enigmatic Lily. She's gorgeous, she can sing, she can dance, and though I don't recall having seen her do it, there's no doubt in my mind she can do a British accent. More importantly, she can handle the two-faced spy element to the role, which is essential. We've seen her do just about everything at such a young point in her career. She's one of our greatest talents, and I feel like she's just getting started. Max, how do you feel about Michelle Williams?
Go Michelle. I think she's great.
Zach, do you have a personal hatred towards Michelle Williams?
I do not have a personal hatred. Wow, what a way to phrase that.
One of the films we reviewed with her in it is My Week with Marilyn, our Indie Spotlight episode 28.2. It also made my top 5 actor biopics in the Sound Off episode 63.4. But also she was Oscar nominated for Blue Valentine and Brokeback Mountain, Manchester by the Sea. I also called her out as should have been nominated for supporting actress for the Amy Schumer film I Feel Pretty. She is amazing in that. She played Gwen Verdon in the Fosse Verdon miniseries on FX and won an Emmy for that. So the girl is somewhat unstoppable. And I encourage those of you that have not seen her work to check it out.
I loved her in Wendy and Lucy, which is a small film.
You would like that movie. I hate that movie.
No, but she did such a great job.
She is a terrific, open, vulnerable actress. It's amazing what she can do. Her Marilyn Monroe is uncanny. I'm going to move on to the Major Larrabee character played in the film by one of my least favorite actors in history, Rock Hudson. The character is one of Lily's targets, but one that she starts to have feelings for, and Rock Hudson is, of course, a total embarrassment to the film. This next actor, the actor I'm choosing to take over this role, he came up on our Oscar preview as having should have been nominated for Best Actor in 3 consecutive years when we first started the show. In 2014 for Nightcrawler, in 2015 for Southpaw, in 2016 for Nocturnal Animals. So he kept coming up on the show. He was also my number 1 film of 2013 before the show started, Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. And of course, I'm referring to Jake Gyllenhaal, who has the rugged good looks one might ask for this role, but also is 10 times the actor Rock Hudson ever was, which I think will be essential to making this character more well-rounded. Plus, he's got this kind of everyman feel to him. You know, he's only got the 1 Oscar nomination again for Brokeback Mountain. I think he's a tremendous, almost underrated actor at this point. That streak that he had between Enemy, Prisoners, Nightcrawler, and Southpaw was a tremendous streak. Max, I'm turning to you as the actor. What do you think about Jake Gyllenhaal?
I mean, in many ways, I agree. It's interesting because he's an actor who has tried to experiment as well. Unlike Willem Dafoe, I think if he doesn't stick to what he does well, it can go awry.
When do you feel like it went awry?
I've seen him do a couple things that felt really surprisingly pushed and over the top. Not that I could do any better.
I mean, you probably could. I'm not going to lie.
Well, hey, I'm 4th. I think it was that funny Netflix movie about the hippopotamus creature.
No, I can see that. I mean, you're right. He can do this.
But I agree. I mean, I think he's turned in some fantastic performances.
Zach, Jake Gyllenhaal.
I'm a fan. I like Jake Gyllenhaal. We're Gyllenhaalics, as we call ourselves. Yeah, I think he's great.
And I actually didn't realize until just now that I'd be reconnecting Jake and Michelle, who had done Brokeback Mountain back in 2005.
Yeah.
Although I think they only had the 1 scene together, but still, they already had potentially a little bit of chemistry. So I'm going to go now to the character of Colonel Ruger, played in the film by Jeremy Kemp, Lily's real-life husband and handler for her spy work. A German soldier. And Kemp is a British actor who constantly played German soldiers for some reason, but he was actually quite good in this role and other German roles he played, like the film The Blue Max, which is one of our 1966 films. But once again, I want to go with an actual German actor. I'm going to go with the actor Sebastian Koch. Koch. Not only is he German, he's a really good actor and has the right look, the right presence. We reviewed him in a small role in Bridge of Spies in episode 18.1. He was also in a film called Bel Canto, which made my top 10 in 2018. But his best and perhaps his most representative work comes from 2 of my favorite films of the 2000s, The Lives of Others in 2006 and Black Book from 2007 from director Paul Verhoeven. I know there's a bit of an age difference between Koch and Williams, but I think that works in this context, especially with her being his sort of protege that he then married. Plus, larger age differences were not uncommon at the time. This film takes place during World War I. And I don't want to suggest that Sebastian Koch is the best German actor. I just think he's the most appropriate for this part. Daniel Bruhl is a great actor, but I need someone dynamically charming. And Daniel Bruhl isn't as classically good-looking as Sebastian Koch is, and I think Koch brings that to the role, and I think that's important. I don't know how well you guys know foreign films or German films. Do you guys know Sebastian Koch?
The Lives of Others was one of my favorite films. I just thought it was fantastic. And the performances were a large part of that.
I mean, like my favorite actor in that movie is since passed away, Ulrich Muh, the one who listens.
Oh, yeah.
He is amazing in that movie and should have been nominated for Best Actor. Sebastian Koch, he's the guy that's being listened to, the playwright.
Right.
It's not a showy role, but he's great in it, I think.
Yes, true. He does a great job. But yes, the role of the older guy who listens, I was blown away by that. For me, it was a lot like what's his name in Straight Story, this kind of powerhouse.
Richard Farnsworth. Yeah.
Yeah, Richard Farnsworth. This beautiful understated thing where everything is bubbling up, and because you actually see the actor, you see the character, see where they went wrong.
He's hearkening back to our top 5 senior citizen films that we did in episode 63.4, I think it was. You know, I appreciate Max calling out previous episodes, even inadvertently. But the exciting thing is, Max, you and I agree in a movie. We both like Lives of Others.
I think we agree from time to time, definitely.
Can't believe you don't like Captain Fantastic. Zach, anything on? You have no Sebastian Coe.
I have no idea.
If you take anything away from tonight, it's The Lives of Others. It's a special movie. And Max, if you might like Black Book. I don't know if you're a Paul Verhoeven fan, but his later films have been amazing. And Black Book is a special movie. It's not in English. It's one of his Danish films. All right. That has been our recasting segment. It was it's always fun to do. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did doing it.
Yeah, it's fun.
I think our remakes are going to be really cool. My Darling Lily is going to win Best Picture, guys. Once I remake it with Jake Gyllenhaal, Michelle Williams, and Sebastian Coe, it's going to be a masterpiece. I'm excited. All right, now it's time for another exciting segment. You guys have been waiting for it. It's time for the top 5. We're going to do the top 5 Shirley MacLaine performances of all time. And I just want to point out that it's not the top 5 Shirley MacLaine films, which I think would be a very different list, at least for me. There'd be some crossover, but not many. And I actually had a discussion with Max and Zach on this, and we decided that we should go this route. We did this once before in episode 28.4. We did a top 5 Harrison Ford performances instead of Harrison Ford films. But so it's not the first time that we've looked just at performances. Max, do you want to explain why you were thinking along these lines of performances?
Well, for me, it was just that this show examines Shirley MacLaine, and so rather than sort of have her be a conduit, if you will, into the movie, you just focus on her. And let the movie be the conduit to Shirley. Just trying to get conduit in there, buddy.
You are. I mean, you're trying to get me to say it. The audience doesn't drink if you say it. So we're doing this top 5 for several reasons. We reviewed the apartment a few days ago. Zach and I were on that show. So that's one of the main reasons. Zach also named Shirley MacLaine as the best actress of 1970 for her work in Two Mules for Sister Sarah. And perhaps more importantly, she is one of the 3 actors that have appeared in 5 of the 6 years that we've studied so far. 1959 in career, that's already come up. 1966 in the film Gambit. 1970, obviously for Two Mules for Sister Sarah. 1988 and 1990. And that speaks to the breadth and longevity of her career, which is impressive by any standard. I will say, Max, she does not have a film in 1986, so she is not going to continue her streak. Although the other actors that we've seen a lot, Max von Sydow, he definitely is in at least one, I think 2 films from 1986 that we're going to watch. And I can't remember if Sean Connery's in anything off the top of my head, but those are the other 2 actors that have come up 5 times. Just a little history here, guys, on MacLaine, which I think will provide context. MacLaine got her start as a chorus girl in Rodgers and Hammerstein, Oklahoma, and on Broadway, and also in The Pajama Game. She'd been trained as a ballet dancer, but felt she was too tall, so she transitioned to more modern dance. At one point, she covered for the lead in the dance-heavy show The Pajama Game. In her first night doing so, Hal Wallace, the president of Paramount, was in the audience. He immediately signed her to a contract, and before you know it, she's the female lead in Alfred Hitchcock's The Trouble with Harry, 2 years removed from her high school graduation. The only acting training that she ever received was during her Broadway tenure. One of the leads in Oklahoma would hold little informal sessions on off days and help train the chorus girls in acting. And that is the extent of her training, which is pretty interesting, as opposed to her Oscar-winning brother, who we learned in the last Sound Off, took classes nearby here with his buddies Jack Nicholson and Robert Towne. And Zach, of course, you know who her Oscar-winning brother is.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, no, Max knows.
Zazie Beetz.
You guys do not know who Shirley MacLaine...
Wait, Matthew McConaughey.
You guys do not know who Shirley MacLaine's brother is?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Shirley MacLaine's brother, Timothy McLaine.
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty is Shirley MacLaine's brother. Okay.
How do you guys not know this? I thought like everybody knew that. But okay, yes, Warren Beatty is 3 years younger than Shirley MacLaine. They are brother and sister. Back to Shirley MacLaine. I'm surprised I didn't know that. In looking at as many films as I could from her career, you do see the lack of craft, which is not necessarily a negative. Instead, she brought sort of an untethered spirit to her characters, a charisma that was fresh and honest. she didn't see herself as the ingenue. She saw herself as a character actress who happened to be getting leading roles, which is perhaps why several of the film in my top 5 happen to be supporting performances. Guys, I actually haven't officially selected a top 5 yet, or a number 5. I have my top 4, but there were 2 movies that I couldn't decide between. I'd never seen them before doing them, watching them for this project, and I really liked them both. And while she's good in both, there's some flaws with each of them, and I'm not sure what to give more weight to. And so I'm going to turn to our resident actor here with what is sort of a blind taste test of sorts. It might be a fun experiment, Max. You don't need to clear up. But I'm going to describe the performance and what I thought about it, and you might help me decide what film I should go with. Option A for my number 5 is a mostly believable, very open performance in a sort of a co-lead kind of thing. There were a handful of choices now and then that felt off. Like I wish she'd gone sotto voce here, or she had an outburst that bumped a little bit that was maybe a little too much. I wouldn't say she completely missed any moments, just foul tips here and there that made it more of an incomplete performance. But I want to add bonus points on this one for even attempting to play this potentially controversial, important role. Option B is a film where she beautifully nails all the emotional beats of a complex character that, granted, might be in her wheelhouse. However, the character has an accent that I'm not sure that she masters, and it's the only thing that I felt was wrong with the performance. It's a distraction at times, but ultimately didn't take away from the film as a whole. It's something that's actually mechanically off with the performance, but not a thing wrong with the rest of the choices. And so, Max, as an actor, how would you evaluate those 2 performances just based on what I said?
Such an interesting question, because you're hearing a story and you're immersed in the story, but you're also pulled out of the story for tiny reasons. And you being a director and having a ton of experience working with actors, you might have been tugged out a little bit more in your first example. What emotional justification was there for her doing X, Y, and Z? Whereas another person might have just eaten it up. With the other one, a bad accent can be rough.
And I appreciate you saying I'm more sensitive to both things. I think the thing with an accent is, like, it was consistent at least. I just didn't buy it. Well, but it didn't change. So there's that. So you get used to it. It was a mechanical fault as opposed to an emotional fault. Option A, minor emotional bumps along the way. Option B, bad accent, but nail the emotional arc.
Go with option A.
Option A. All right. I'm going to do that. And so option A is, ladies and gentlemen, The Children's Hour from 1961. And it is a very, very bold movie in which Shirley MacLaine bravely in 1961 plays a lesbian, the earliest reference to a serious LGBT character that I can remember. The film is, of course, based on a Lillian Hellman play and directed by the man that I named the best director of 1970. Do you remember who I named the best director of 1970, Zach?
No, don't do this to me.
It's one of the only films that Max watched from 1970 in review.
Is his first name Jack?
It is not. It's from The Liberation of L.B. Jones. William Wyler was the guy I named as best director of 1970, which Max did watch on his own just for fun.
Oh my God, yes I did. It's been so long. Yes, that was amazing.
He also directed The Children's Hour, just trying to bring it full circle. The film is outstanding and important, though very flawed. Surprisingly, not all of the performances are solid. Audrey Hepburn is a little out of her element, I felt. But MacLaine, who obviously has the juicier role, is very effective and believable in spite of the occasional bump that I alluded to. In any of her early performances, and even in some of her later ones, I noticed the tendency to overdo it ever so slightly. She's often much more understated here and has several evocative moments. Again, bonus points for even taking the role of a character that is dealing with sexual identity this early. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a film about LGBT issues that came out before 1961. I don't think I have. The structure of the film is much like the film that made my top 10 of the last decade, The Hunt, Mads Mikkelsen, but it's a very similar idea. The basic idea is they run a little school for girls. One of the girls, in order to get out of trouble, tells a lie that these two are lovers. And so the whole town decides that they're lovers based on this girl's accusation and withdraws all the girls from the school, and they lose their business. And then as it turns out, Shirley MacLaine's like, well, I kind of am. It's a really important movie, and it really touched me. I was very impressed with the boldness of it for the time. You haven't seen the movie, it sounds like, Max.
No, it's all new to me. I would like to see it.
Zach, you have the movie in your possession.
Oh, I do. Okay. I'll watch it.
It's the Netflix movie that I left with you.
Got it.
Yes, The Children's Hour. You helped me choose that, Max. Thank you very much.
Yeah, anytime.
Later on, when he watches all of Shirley MacLaine's films, he'll come back and says, how did you miss this other one? I'm like, that was the other option. You talked me out of it. And then you're like, her accent was great in that. You know, that's what it's going to be. And you're going to do it just like that, apparently, like a Muppet. So, guys, it's time for my number 4 Shirley MacLaine performance. As I mentioned, I had several supporting performances on the list, and here is the first. This is the film Being There from 1979. It's not the most dimensional character she's ever played, but she brings so much charm and need to the trophy wife character in the film Being There from director Hal Ashby, who incidentally was the editor of The Children's Hour. What puts this performance over the top for me is her masturbation scene, which might be one of the finest of its kind and is something of a serio-comic masterpiece. She goes all out, which is simultaneously frightening and impressive, but most importantly, hilarious. Aside from that, the rest of the character isn't challenging, but she handles it effortlessly with her great light presence and spirit that Max alluded to. Max, it's possible you've seen Being There.
It's very possible. It's one of my favorite films. When you were talking about the masturbation scene, it escaped me.
Well, I mean, he likes to watch. Do you remember that? He's referring to television. She thinks he means something else. So she goes to town thinking he's watching her, and he's watching television.
That's right. And he's just watching television.
Oh, my God, it's so good. The old man in Being There, Zach, is Melvin Douglas, who is the father, and I Never Sang for My Father.
Oh, got it. Cool.
I assume you've not seen Being There, Zach.
No.
But it's one of Max's all-time favorites, apparently.
So good. It's so good.
This next film, I initially dismissed this movie as chick lit adaptation, but not only did I think the movie was lovely, I thought Shirley MacLaine was transcendent in a more recent performance and another supporting role. The film is called In Her Shoes from 2005, from director Curtis Hanson, best known for LA Confidential. Incidentally, a young Curtis Hanson was the screenwriter on the 1970 film The Dunwich Horror. Full circle again! Look at that, guys!
Right on.
Anyway, Shirley MacLaine is amazing in this film, In Her Shoes. It's lower in the list because it's a relatively small role as the absentee grandmother to Cameron Diaz and Toni Collette, but it has a lasting impact. She allowed the character's maturity to deal with the past differently than she used to, but you could sense that her anger and hurt and protective nature that she had had in the past was still there underneath. She effectively showed the character swallowing those darker emotions, which I found to be very cinematic. I avoided this film for a long time. I imagine you guys may have as well, because it feels like such a girl movie. Has anybody seen In Her Shoes?
No. Judging from that poster, I definitely would avoid it.
Right?
You're saying it's good, so I take your word for it.
They market it as this like girly rom-com thing, sisters fighting against each other, but it actually gets into family dynamics in a deep and interesting way. Max, In Her Shoes?
Haven't seen it, but sounds good.
My number 2 is a movie that we talked about a lot the other night. It's my 21st favorite movie of all time. I know at least Zach has seen this one. Talking about The Apartment, of course, and MacLaine is magnificent here. She practically creates the iconic type, namely the manic pixie dream girl that we talked about with her performance in this movie. What impresses me most about the performance is her raw vulnerability without ever losing dimension. She's always a real person, whether it's in pain, in love, confused, and she's never melodramatic about it. She also manages the tricky tone that we talked about a lot on the show, the balance of comedy and drama, and has enough charisma to allow us to fall for her along with CeCe Baxter. In looking at the Oscar race of 1960, at least among the nominees, I do think Shirley MacLaine should have won the Best Actress Oscar that year for her performance in The Apartment. Zach, I believe you're a fan as well.
I am a fan. I would love to be on a slow elevator with her down to China.
That's a line from the movie that he kind of messed up, but
it was close enough.
It's close enough. Max, I assume you've seen The Apartment.
It's been such a long time, but I love it. Brilliant.
The fans of the show will definitely know where I'm going next. Does anybody have any guesses as to what my number 1 movie Shirley MacLaine performance is going to be? I brought it up on the show before, so the fans will know. They're looking to our audio podcast group. They're looking confused with their cameras, so it looks like they're not going to take a guess. It's another supporting performance, but the acting is so good. She's so transformative in the movie and gets to bring so many aspects of her career to this role. For this role, I named her as the best supporting actress of 1990 for our 1990 in review. Ladies and gentlemen, referring to Postcards from the Edge from director Mike Nichols. If you know the backstory, it's based on a book by Carrie Fisher, then you know that Shirley MacLaine is, for all intents and purposes, playing Debbie Reynolds. Shirley MacLaine knew Debbie Reynolds, and she channels Debbie Reynolds in an almost freaky way. She sings, she dances, she yells, she drinks, she twirls. Most importantly, she goes toe-to-toe with Meryl Streep, who is amazing. And MacLaine appropriately dominates every scene she's in. I personally think it's the best acting she does in her whole career. And like The Apartment, the balance between comedy and drama is a wonder to behold. Such a difficult tightrope walk. The film came up a lot in our 1990 review. Not only did I name MacLaine, I also said Mike Nichols should have been nominated for Best Director. And it was my number 3 film of 1990. Max, have you seen Postcards from the Edge?
I'm embarrassed and ashamed to admit I've never seen it, but it totally makes sense that would be your number 1.
That's good. I like making sense. So I wonder if Zach has seen Postcards from the Edge.
Negative. I have not. Negative. Sorry to disappoint, Father.
It's okay. You also have access to that one right now.
Oh, great.
In his apartment is the DVD of Postcards from the Edge. Somewhere.
It's going to be a long week, Zach.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lost weekend next weekend for Zach as he pours through old Shirley MacLaine films. There's one obvious omission here, guys, that I know the audience is going to be annoyed about. Does anybody want to guess what you may have been expecting to come up on here that it did not? Her Oscar-winning role.
Not 2 Meals for Sister Sarah, but she's super cool in that.
She's good. We talked about that. It did not make the list. I just felt these performances were good.
And I understand why, but for personal reasons, she's very, very dope. She's super cool in that movie.
Zach's crushing a little bit, guys. I think Shirley MacLaine. Max, do you know her Oscar-winning role?
No, I don't.
Probably her most iconic role. The obvious omission, I think, the audience is going to think this, I believe, is her Oscar-winning performance in terms of endearment. We studied the films of 1983 back on my old show, Film Revision, that I did for PBS back in 2008. As I said then, it's one of those films that I think is way over the top. And as iconic as the character of Aurora Greenway is, I think Shirley is sadly over the top and melodramatic in the role, in a very manipulative movie. Another nominee in that year of 1983 was Julie Walters in Educating Rita. And if you watched our review of that film in episode 24.3, you know that I think that performance is a top 10 all-time performance. And so, no, I don't think Shirley should have won for Terms of Endearment. And you can see us talking about that in my old show, Film Revision, way back in the day. I do think she should have won 2 Oscars in her career. Like I said, Best Actress in 1960 for The Apartment and Best Supporting Actress in 1990. 30 years later for Postcards from the Edge. So, guys, those are my choices. Obviously, I admitted Terms of Endearment. Any other thoughts or omissions based on you guys' experience? Like Zach talked about 2 Mules from Sister Sarah. Any chance you've seen that film, Max, 2 Mules from Sister Sarah?
I haven't. I would like to. It sounds like a compelling film from Zach's perspective.
He likes Bad Girl Nuns.
I like Bad Girl Nuns, and I like Westerns, and I like Shirley MacLaine.
It has it all.
Yeah, I do like Clint Eastwood.
What I like about it, I like Don Siegel, the director Don Siegel. 2 Mules for Sister Sarah. It was a top 10 movie for me from 1970. Max, any other omissions? Were you mad about
not that you should have had this, but because of tonight, I watched Career, and I had no idea what the movie was, and I had some sort of preconceived notions because it was black and white and in the 50s, and it just crushed everything. It was a wonderful movie, and she was a standout. It was so interesting in terms of what you described in her training and not having any. You can see that she's just eating everything up, and everybody else is kind of staying really steadily along. Like, I'm a good, solid actor.
Except for Dean Martin. Dean Martin also has this sort of untrained way about him, way about him.
Dean Martin has so much charisma. He wasn't very good in the movie, quite frankly, but he's like charismatic and fantastic to watch.
I agree with a lot of that. He did make my Best Supporting Actor list of 1959, but for Rio Bravo, not for...
Okay. Everything about the movie I thought was very good. She just stood out.
I agree about the looseness. I mean, for me, the performance of the movie is Anthony Franciosa. Both James and Patrick named him as the best actor of 1959. Anthony Franciosa was my second choice. He was in second place. I think Franciosa is tremendous in that movie, and I also love the movie. It was my number 7 film of 1959. There are a couple things as far as Shirley MacLaine's concerned in that movie. She's in that movie even less than she's in a lot of these other movies. True. There wasn't enough meat on that bone for me, and the character, she's great, but the character's sort of flat. So I just felt like these other performances were a little more weighty.
No, I agree. And Franciosa, he was so believable in that it felt like you were watching somebody whose life was just kind of in shambles the whole movie. I mean, it was really, really brilliant performance.
Kind of like Zach's Life in Shambles.
Fair, yeah.
If we did a top 5 movies that Shirley MacLaine has appeared in, I think Career might make that list. I would put Career ahead of Two Mules for Sister Sarah in terms of top 5 films that she appeared in list. Like, obviously, The Apartment would be number 1 on that list.
No other Shirley MacLaine films come to mind. I mean, I'm just a huge fan. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we dug deep on Shirley MacLaine, and that's going to bring us to the end of our evening, which is kind of exciting. So it's time for an evening summary. Zach, how do you feel about all the events of this sound-off?
This is all good, man. The recastings are fun. I think this is probably my first one, right?
I think you were on last year, but you didn't participate.
It was fun to participate in something.
Max, how do you feel about the evening?
It's even more beautiful than the day.
Good, I guess. So, guys, I want to say goodbye to the audience.
Bye.
Bye,
Peace, they say,
audience.
waving and peacing. With that, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.